We're back with the breaking news in the world lead. President Trump may be, quote, cocked and loaded, but if he fires on Iran, the situation could escalate and spread fast. Let's go to CNN's Tom Foreman. And Tom, the U.S. has its allies, but so does Iran, and Iran also has those proxies. Any strike, of course, could trigger widespread retaliation.
Yeah, that's really the problem here. If U.S. forces struck Iran, they would be taking on a robust enemy with somewhere around 1 million troops guarding a country nearly twice the size of Texas. But the conflict could well expand beyond Iran's borders to several places where Iran has influence, agents, and allies, igniting much of the region. Let's look at some of that. In Iraq, Shia militias backed by Iran could go after thousands of U.S. troops and American contractors still there. In Syria, Shia militias and Hezbollah, also supported by Iran and considered a terrorist group by the U.S., could turn on American outposts there. There are only a few hundred American troops left, but those numbers could make them particularly vulnerable. Beyond that, in Lebanon, same story. Hezbollah could very likely unleash rocket barrages against Israel, which is, of course, an important U.S. ally. Hamas could do the same thing from Gaza. The conflict in Yemen could be another flashpoint, with Houthi rebels staging attacks on U.S. and Saudi forces in Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. And in Afghanistan, yes, there too, Iran has fighters who could turn on U.S. troops with renewed fury if the Iranian homeland were attacked. Beyond that, Iranian forces could try to shut down the Strait of Hormuz right here, through which 1/5 of the world's petroleum supplies pass. This has been called by the U.S. government the single most important oil choke point in the world. And do not forget that Iran's missiles would easily have the range to hit U.S. military bases throughout this region. None of this has to happen if the U.S. strikes Iran. But Jake, military and political analysts know all of it could.
All right, Tom Foreman, thanks so much. I want to bring in Democratic Congressman Eliot Engel. He's the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Chairman Engel, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
You were briefed on the situation with Iran yesterday. Were you told about any plans for a strike? Have you heard more from the White House today?
Well, yesterday I left the meeting with the president and other members of the House and Senate with the definite feeling that we were going to somehow strike Iran. I was very surprised when I heard the news to the contrary early this morning. The president didn't go into details, but certainly gave strong feelings that we were going to retaliate somehow.
As you know, it seems rather unlikely that any military plan would be presented to the president without a casualty assessment, you know, as one of the first 2 or 3 bullet points. And I'm being told by Pentagon sources that yes, they did. Do you understand the idea about President Trump being told, not towards the end, or not understanding or asking about towards the end what the casualty assessment was?
Well, I don't know what the story was there, but it's certainly logical. Just take logic. This would be one of the first questions, if not the first question, that the President of the United States would ask his people. So find it difficult to believe that he waited until the very end to do it. Now, perhaps he had some mixed feelings about it, and that was plausible after the meeting we had. But I was shocked this morning when I heard that he had done an about-face.
Do you think he made a mistake by doing the about-face? Do you think that he should have carried out the strike, or what's your feelings about his ultimate final decision?
No, I think. Look, I hope that perhaps this will lead to calmer heads prevailing. Look, we don't want a confrontation with Iran. I don't like the Iranian regime. I don't like what they did. I don't like what they continue to do. The leading state sponsor of terrorism in the world. But I don't think that a war with Iran, given all we know about what happened in Iraq and other places, is something that we should strive for. In fact, quite the opposite. We should make sure that we work with our allies. By the way, we have our allies, France, the UK, Germany. We need to work with them because that'll strengthen our hand.
Do you have any concerns that the president making this about face, pulling back from the strike, will embolden Iran at all?
It's hard to say, Jake, because I don't really know what went on behind the scenes once the president obviously made a decision to not do it. I don't know. I mean, I would hope we could use this as an opportunity to try to calm the situation. And by the way, as you know, presidents have been using the 2001 AUMF.
The authorization for use of military force
Right.
against Afghanistan. Yeah.
Right, and they've used it as a catch-all for everything. We in the Foreign Affairs Committee reject that in terms of using it for the situation now.
You think the president needs to come to Congress to get the authority to strike Iran if he wants to?
Absolutely. I think the president needs to come to Congress if you're going to war with Iran. I mean, individual strike, we don't want to tie the president's hands, but in terms of going to war, we're a co-equal branch of government. It's very important that Congress have a say in it. You know, we have not had a declared war where Congress has declared war since World War II. We dragged into war in Iraq, we dragged into other wars, and each president thinks that he can do things with impunity. I don't want to see that. The Foreign Affairs Committee members don't want to see that. And we want to make sure that they're not using any kind of excuse to drag us into war with the 2001 AUMF, which is certainly irrelevant when it comes to this situation with Iran.
But you're right. Presidents Bush and Obama, before Trump, used it to
Yes.
basically do whatever they wanted to do. Chairman Engel of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.
Joe Biden's